I now turn to the second speaker, Kholi Buthelezi from Sisonke. Kholi Buthelezi is a feminist activist and founding member of Sisonke, a national movement for sex workers in South Africa, of all diversities in 2003. She thrives on the mobilization for safeguarding the health, human and justice rights of sex workers, reiterating the call for the decriminalization of sex work, together with the Sex Workers Education Advocacy Task Force. She wears numerous hats, from Sisonke National Coordinator, ASWA Board Member, NSWP and CCM member. She would be focusing on the key populations and problems relating to their equitable and equal access to HIV prevention, treatment and services. Over to you, Kholi.
Delegates, distinguished participants, key populations, good afternoon South African time and good morning from other countries. I hope my speech will contribute to the great value on behalf of the key population worldwide. As women in South Africa, we face a disruptive of the HIV with adolescents and young women and girls aged 15 to 24, and who are most vulnerable with the HIV prevalence. That is 3.3 times greater than the male peers, and also additional key population in South Africa continue to face the highest privilege, HIV and gender-based violence. Key population face criminalization. In South Africa, sex work and people who use drugs are criminal and also punishable with the fine or jail term. Criminalization fuels stigma and discrimination, as well as human rights abuses, increases the vulnerability to HIV, TB, STIs, and hepatitis. The National Strategic Plan of South Africa for the HIV and TB and STI 27 and 2020 of South Africa acknowledge and recognize that despite of the South Africa and recognizes that South Africa being recognized globally and also positioning and response of the HIV, numerous challenges remains as it is across the worldwide, and also key population in South and Eastern Africa often face criminalization and often greatest burden of the HIV. South Africa has also developed a human rights plan and gender plan that aims to reduce and discriminate against the key population to ensure that equal enjoyment of the human rights are actually accessible. And also it has the 7 pillars. That is the plan for all key population in South Africa. And South Africa is an international funded combination prevention and programs for key population that are rights-based and also evidence-informed and community-owned. All key population received biomedical and behavioral and structural interventions, which are prioritized to meet the needs of the individuals and the communities to have greatest impact. While prevention and programs amongst the population are increasing, they are still not sufficient scale and also quality to make the necessity impact to reduce the human rights and HIV rights abuse and also the population in South Africa. The challenges remain across the KPs, communities, and also especially within the rural areas. Also, South Africa is a large reliant on the international funding for key population programs. Also, for this support, we are very grateful and also ask the continuation of support for these programs that do valuable work in reaching the key population. This program also are built to expertise of the local and the civil society organizations and key populations movement in South Africa, which is vital for sustainability and letting the key populations led. We have a long, long way to go, but we still have a long road to travel where the key populations are decriminalized and no longer face the stigma and discrimination, but working together. We believe as a population that together we will make a difference in our countries. I thank you. Thank you so much. A couple of things that I would like to raise and to bring to the attention of this hearing is that COVID actually hit hard to the key population. So therefore, I think it is important that if sex work were to be decriminalized in the countries, sex workers will be able to have access to all the benefits, just like any other general communities. Also, the issue of the youth I think the challenge that we're having is the stigma and discrimination towards the healthy facilities. If we're to have a space where it's free stigma and non-judgmental, the youth and young women and girls, they will be able to access facilities without fear. And also funding, I think around the advocacy is important, because that then will also give an opportunity to organization and community-led organizations to do the advocacy work around any issues that concerns them. The pilot and also the monitoring of the evaluation of the services that are put in place, it is important, because therefore that gives us an opportunity to be able to see that what you put in place, is it working or it's not working. To have healthy champions, I think, around the young women and girls, and also more awareness, people to understand that education is about the safer sex. It is not about the sexual intercourse, but it is about the safer sex. Lastly, I think my comment would be the big barrier is the criminalization. I see today we're having this hearing. So I'm hoping that as I'm representing the key population, being the key population myself, we plead this platform to recognize the call for the decriminalization and remove the criminalization, because it will then give us an opportunity to have access to all the concerns that we brought forward. Thank you.
Our first speaker is Kaythi Winn. Kaythi Winn works for the Asia Pacific Network of Sex Workers, APNSW, as its regional coordinator. Before joining APNSW, she worked as a senior program manager of the Population Services International TOP program in Myanmar for 9 years and has over 17 years of experience establishing comprehensive nationwide HIV prevention care and support services for male, female, and transgender communities, and advocating for the human rights of sex workers in Asia and the Pacific region. She is also the founder of AMA, which is a sex worker-led organization in Myanmar, and she is the president of the Global Network of Sex Worker Projects and of the International Steering Committee of the Red Umbrella Fund. Welcome, Kay, to the panel today. And I would like to give the floor to you. I think today you're going to be speaking to us about the crucial role that sex worker communities play in addressing HIV, the HIV response, and the experiences and challenges that they have as well. The floor is yours. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm sorry that what happened, technology happened. I'm proud to be present there in the high level of the multi-high level stakeholder hearing meeting on behalf of the sex worker from Asia Pacific. And I want to speak about the important gap and how we shape in movement and leadership in HIV programming for the sex worker. Firstly, how do people perceive the sex worker? The people in the world perceive sex worker from the moral viewpoint, not from human rights viewpoint. So the world that we live, it lacks knowledge of our life in reality, including policymaker, lawmaker, and society. They misunderstand us and perceive sex worker and other key population from moral viewpoint. So often, the law and policy are against us and create barrier to access essential HIV services, prevention, support, treatment, and care. There are very few law and policy which respect, protect, and promote the human rights of the sex worker. In Asia and Pacific, there are 37 countries. Only New Zealand and some part of Australia, sex workers are decriminalized. And all other countries, sex worker or our work are somehow criminalized. And we are subject to increase the violence, stigma, and discrimination. In the environment, it is community leadership and innovative. Despite that these barriers affect positive change. We cannot reach community without community. And especially in the criminalized and hospital environment, we have many examples and evidence of how sex workers and other key population have organized, ensuring access to services and advocacy in the most challenging environment to provide access to testing, treatment, and care. We are left behind the law and donor. Because we are criminalized and stigmatized population, and we don't have access to funding to support our community. It is not surprise. Key population and their partners, sex worker, MSN, transgender, PLHIV, people who use drug, and people in close setting, account for 98% of new HIV infection in the Asia-Pacific region. And sadly, this is not unique to my region. So there always seem to be challenges and gap. Why key population are always continuously left behind? Due to time limitation, I do not want to tell all the challenges what we face, but all the effort what we have been doing in this challenge and this handful policy, but this is daily badly for the key population and our network. However, I can say without recognition of human rights of sex worker and key population, they have to change the law and policy, violence, stigma and discrimination. And important support for structural change was we cannot end AIDS. And we cannot end HIV without protecting the human rights of the key population. We must invest effectiveness, sustainable, community-led solution. That's why, as a community, we demand that structural change to be support, protect the human rights of the key population, including the sex worker, and to ensure that meaningful involvement of the environment and consenting with the sex worker and other key population to implement the necessary right-based HIV program, prevention, treatment, and care. I want to say that the secret of the change is to force all of your energy, not to fighting the old thing, but on build the new environment. Thank you. I thank you for the giving the opportunity. I think it's for our aim to have is to end the HIV and to end the AIDS. Is that without community, they had not possible to end the HIV because as the key population, we are the owner of the HIV. We know the solution. We know the how to stop the HIV also. So just let's give us opportunity to lead by us. This is what I want to say. And I have one thing is that I'm sorry to bring to this issue that it is very feeling for me. And this is, I am taking the opportunity that in this hearing for the Myanmar people to save the Myanmar and also the support from the international community and government. Because in the international government, you have invested a lot to work on HIV and work on human rights in the Myanmar. Now they have this military had just stopped, finished it. So we haven't tried long time. So that's why we need the support of the international community and international government. So today is the 24th. There we had the ASEAN is recognizing the new ASEAN is having. So we want to see the world to recognize the national unity of government of the Myanmar. Please say no to the military genders. Thank you.
What I'd like to do now, Excellencies and dear colleagues, is to pass the floor to Ms. Ikka Noviyanti from Youth Leadership, Education, Advocacy and Development from Indonesia. She's an advocacy officer and works on creating an inclusive region where the human rights of young people are respected and the impact of HIV and AIDS is mitigated through equal and equitable access to HIV prevention, treatment, care and support. Ikka, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me. Distinguished delegates, member states, members of civil society and communities everywhere. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, from wherever you may be watching. My name is Ikka Noviyanti, and it's my pleasure to address you at this hearing. I was born and raised in Indonesia, a country diverse in people, culture, and language. I'm 27 years old, and I'm a young sex worker living with HIV. I was diagnosed with HIV in 2015. This past 6 years, I have been able to walk against the tides of the epidemic because I received treatment on time, correct information, support from my peers, and capacity development training, among others. On the other hand, I have also faced challenges and harsh realities of living with HIV and as a young sex worker. As a young woman living with HIV who is also a sex worker, I know firsthand how inequality and inequity are driving the HIV epidemic. Today, I'm here to speak to you all on both the key challenges and solutions as I represent the young key population from Asia and the Pacific. Firstly, human rights violations and discrimination are rampant. The criminalization of people who use drugs, sex workers, same-sex practices, transgender people has been the greatest barrier in accessing services by key population, including women, young people, and migrants. Unfortunately, our region has seen little to no progress. Today, we still see extrajudicial killings, unlawful persecution, abuse and brutality of minority groups that are justified by morality based on the regressive laws and policies. This has to stop. This has to stop now. These policies and human rights violations are not only a great threat to the HIV response, but undermine all our basic human rights. Before anything else, we are human first. Secondly, the rate of disengagement from care loss among young people aged 15 to 24 years living with HIV is almost twice in comparison to that of young people 10 to 14 years or adults over 25 years. There are still many adolescents who do not have access to sexual health services and HIV services due to laws that act as a barrier to access HIV testing, treatment, and prevention, such as age of consent, laws for accessing HIV testing, as well as laws that restrict access to harm reduction services. I hope any laws or policy that limit the terms or revise or repeal immediately. Thirdly, we had made significant progress toward domestic investment for the HIV response. However, despite domestic spending for HIV, key population programs and community-led intervention have not received equal attention. The exclusion of key population in programs in national budget priorities and the reduction of donor support pose a serious threat to the sustainability of community-led intervention that are effective in reaching key population. In light of these challenges and barriers, I share on my behalf of my community the following concrete proposal and solution they present. I urge member states to, first, commit to ensuring access to HIV prevention, treatment, testing and treatment for all, including access to optimized tools and commodities. Second, ensure that laws and policy reflect our basic human rights principle, enact laws that are not punitive, but instead protect and respect our communities. Third, ensure domestic financing for community-led programs, including HIV prevention among key population. The transition plan should meaningfully engage key population and people living with HIV, including young people. Fourth, repeal laws and policy that restrict the young and adolescent key population to access the sexual reproductive health, HIV, and harm reduction services. Fifth, the effect of gender inequality and gender power imbalance continue to create barriers for women and women living with HIV to access services, especially sexual and reproductive health services. Confronting harmful bias against women, including women from key population, is essential. Confronting gender-based violence experienced by women at personal and institutional level is critical. The last one, creating enabling environment where each key population and people living with HIV can live their lives the fullest. We have heard from various speakers during the meeting today who have given technical and life experience intervention that will enable us to achieve the goals of the Global AIDS strategy. We urge member states to utilize the recommendation from the multi-stakeholder hearing in making the decision that will chart the course of the global HIV epidemic response. Thank you.